If they don't like what you say, they can turn it off and you're impoverished.
Looking forward, rapid changes are taking place in the global monetary system that may affect the international role of the dollar in the future. Most major economies already have or are in the process of developing instant 24/7 payments. Our own FedNow service will be coming online in 2023. And in light of the tremendous growth in crypto assets and stablecoins, we are examining whether a U.S. central bank digital currency would improve upon what is an already safe and efficient domestic payment system. As our white paper on this topic notes, a U.S. CBDC could also potentially help maintain the dollar's international standing.
A form of money you cannot see. Central bank digital currency. Currently, regular bank deposits, cash, and cryptocurrencies issued by the private sector, such as Diem and Bitcoin, all have a few features that make them useful. But the hope is that publicly available CBDCs would have all these desirable characteristics. Unlike your savings in a commercial bank, which rely on the bank's promise to fulfill, CBDCs are recognized by law and backed by the power of the central bank, which cannot go bankrupt. For example, if a commercial bank collapses, part of your savings could potentially be wiped out. But this wouldn't be the case for CBDCs, which could be as trusted as cash, as convenient as a payment app, yet also benefit from the same blockchain technology which underpins cryptocurrencies. And, just like cash, CBDCs could be distributed through commercial banks, avoiding too much disruption to the financial system, or the central bank having to deal directly with many millions of citizens and businesses.
What they want to do is bring in this thing called the central banking digital currency. They want to replace fiat paper money with digital money as a competitor to Bitcoin and crypto money, right? But instead of being decentralized currency, it will be controlled by a government. It's digital currency, but controlled centrally through the banks, Bank of England. So instead of having a bank account with whatever, HSBC or Bank of America, you'll have a bank account directly with, in the American context, with the Fed. In the UK, directly with the Bank of England. You have a personal bank account, and you're given digital money in that bank account. These are called central banking digital currencies. The Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK has already announced their intention to do this as the G7 group. That this digital currency, once you're because everyone knows that with inflation at over 5%, it's now 5.4%, right? Our fiat money, the paper money, is increasingly becoming worthless, and we're headed towards a big disaster. The Fed wants to raise interest rates. But we're in so much debt that if you raise interest rates, people are going to suffer because we're living on debt as Western economies. So they realize that this kind of the lifespan of paper money is fast coming to an end because of the 2008 economic crash in particular. So they're bringing in these central banking digital currencies. Why is that word programmable in there? So what they said in that article, and the Chancellor put a video out saying this as well. They said, right, think back to what vaccine passports were, yeah? If you don't have your jab, you can't even eat in this restaurant. What they've said, and why the word programmable was in that headline was, they've said that this money that you will earn from work, instead of having paper money, you have this digital money. It's programmable so that you can't buy certain foods, or if you do something that your employer doesn't like, it's all in that article. You won't be able to spend your money. In other words, it's not money. They're vouchers. They're like food vouchers. And they can be programmed so that, like the Chinese social credit system, that if you try and use them on a certain thing, it won't work. You say you want to buy a burger and they want you to buy bugs, which is one of the examples used. If you start to try and buy unhealthy meat, just won't work. You tap your card, you can't buy the thing because you've met your quota that month of burgers. You have to buy something like a vegan meal. And here is the article. Bank of England tells ministers to intervene on digital currency programming. Yeah, and here's a quote from the article. This is in the Telegraph, the one he pulled up, but it was behind a paywall, so I'll just read the quote. Digital cash could be programmed to ensure it is only spent on essentials or goods which an employer or government deems to be sensible.
Holy shit.
Now, I'm going to take it one step further for you, Joe, right? So the vaccine passport infrastructure is in place. But now we know that the vaccine doesn't stop infection or transmission, but the checkpoint Charlie exists everywhere. They bring in digital banking, central banking digital currencies. You've got a scenario now that you're checking in and out everywhere you go using vouchers that are programmed, and you can only spend where you're told you can spend them. You bring in that digital currency and you've got this total control. And if I'm speaking to you the way I'm speaking now, and my employer or government, you heard that in the quote directly, yeah, deems me as saying or doing something inappropriate, suddenly I can't actually pay to come here and speak to you anymore. My digital currency won't even pay for the ticket because it will be known that I'm coming to speak to you.
Whenever people these days say that cash is cold and hard, that's because it's dead. Like Pogs, VCRs, and talking to your neighbors, cash is quickly becoming a thing of the past. And one day, cash could disappear or become obsolete. But this could be a big problem. No matter who you are or what your political persuasion, you need cash. And without it, we're all in trouble.
The crackdown has really begun in earnest now. As you mentioned, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police has shared a list of names with the banks of people who've been involved in the protests. These are people whose accounts the law enforcement wants frozen. And we've seen reports that this is about a list of about 24 names, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 names of people that the government wants to freeze their accounts to try to get them out of these protests.
And we are on our 20-acre off-grid homestead in North Idaho.
It's been a few months since we installed this off-grid system, and we want to take the opportunity to talk to you guys about all of your most asked questions.
Turn to Puerto Rico, where Hurricane Fiona has knocked out power and water to up to 1 million people.
I came mentally prepared for this, the long line, so I could have a little bit of cash on me, because almost all of the businesses here are only taking cash, so you have to do it.
Because I'm the last line of defense between sleaze like this and the decent people in this town.
Oh, hi, Frank. Say, we got that model D83 Swedish Sure Grip suck machine in that you ordered.
It's a gift.
Critical data and damaged networks. They exist anonymously on the web, but we found one who agreed to talk to us.
Hi there.
What are you?
Gianna, nice to meet you. Gianna, nice to meet you.
As the overall standard of life has gone up in the United States, its citizens have become increasingly reticent to work in the fields for such little pay. So who's doing the work? Well, that's where migrant workers come in. The heavy flow of migrant workers has kept U.S. farms viable.
Your credit card involves two main companies, your bank, which loans you the money, and the card network that handles the transaction, like Visa or MasterCard. Those two companies handle the most credit card transactions in the US. When you use your credit card, the transaction runs through a store's processing system, through the credit card's network to your card's bank, and there are fees throughout these steps. Every time you use your credit card, a whole series of behind-the-scenes steps and fees kicks in so you can get
It ain't your money unless you got it in your hands.
Centralization versus decentralization. Basically, it's no longer about left or right. It's about up versus down.
The reality has been a great transfer of wealth has taken place. Meanwhile, state-imposed sanctions are being proposed on the most vulnerable.
The coronavirus pandemic brought economic hardship for so many people. It also created hundreds of new billionaires.
Say record gas prices are among the biggest factors driving inflation right now.
Discipline per capital, so no more than 27.
On the pace of inflation in the U.S.
Absolutely should be buying this thing because this is just a
cost of food, electricity, and rent have all been steadily increasing over the past.
That's right. The price of gas soaring to new record highs.
And oil companies, they provide no explanation. The fact is, they're ripping you off.
Experiencing dramatically higher prices.
Skyrocketing rents, forcing a growing number of Americans to think twice about where home is.
Rising cost of living crisis.
The cost of living crisis. Higher cost of living.
According to this chart, what is the biggest driver of inflation during the pandemic? The blue is the dark blue is the recent period.
It would be corporate profits.
And what is that percentage?
It is 54%, and that number does stay that level of high if you update that number to more recent numbers as well.
So over half of the increased prices people are paying are coming from increases in corporate profits.
Yes, the unit price index is reflected in corporate profits as opposed to other costs.
And how does that compare to historically?
Woman Katie Porter demonstrated there the high prices that we're seeing at gas stations and stores in many cases are high because corporations are choosing to keep them high. You saw this last week with the announcement of record profits by the Shell Oil Corporation. This week from the New York Times, food prices soar, and so do companies' profits, reporting that some food companies and restaurants are continuing to raise prices even if their own inflation-driven costs have been covered.
Well, what about him recording me?
Oh, he'll record you if we pay the freight.
Scratch a lie, find a thief.
What's that supposed to mean?
This. You see, I saw Jack Lauder the other night, and he gave me $500 advance on my record. He also said he'd put me on the road with Lo Folsom and pay me 3 times as much as you've been paying.
No, that's a lie.
Ain't no way he gonna put some blind man on the road. Think about it. I mean, you need watching out for, and he ain't got the time to look after you the way I've been looking after you. Is that what you've been doing, guys? He watching out for me? Is that why you get paid double what I do? Who told you that? Well, it's true, ain't it? You and Marlene have been gaming me since I got here.
Ray, baby, listen.
Got to listen to you. Look, Ray, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Then why aren't you talking?
Everybody knows that in the last 10 years, the people who own companies have made huge amounts of money. Their incomes have gone way, way up.
We are in the midst of the most severe class warfare this country has seen since the 1920s.
So what goes on right now, if workers are in a union and they go out on strike, what the owner says, very often, hey, please go out on strike, because I'm going to bring in permanent replacements to take your job at lower wages. So workers then have 2 problems. Number one, their basic American right to strike is taken away from them. And second of all, they sit there and they say, hey, if I stand up for my rights, and I don't want to accept a cut in my salary, if I go out on strike, I'm going to lose my job completely. So I can't go out on strike. So I have to accept what the boss gives me.
What's happening is the company is fighting tooth and nail. They bring in these highfalutin consultants at $500 an hour to beat them back. If somehow or another the union is successful in organizing, they don't negotiate the first contract. What they are saying is, we're going to beat you. We're not here to negotiate. We're not here to work with you. We are going to break you, and we are going to lower your standard of living so we, the wealthiest people in America, can become even wealthier.
The workers at Nabstown Warehouse in Staten Island have voted to unionize, marking a major victory for organized labor.
Who voted to unionize for the first time in the face of strong opposition from management. The latest sign that unions may be making a comeback.
Electronics giant is laying off hundreds of employees in an effort to lower cost and improve profit.
Industry. The median annual salary of layoffs yesterday as part of CEO Chris Licht's efforts.
We did. Beginning of the fourth quarter, we took some more pricing. Again, all of that is based on commodity inputs.
This time at Ford, 8,000 job cuts to help fund investments in the...
You're going to somehow see a rise in unemployment.
According to the New York Times, and this is the largest layoff in the company's nearly 30-year history, it's also something we've now been hearing from so many tech companies.
The technology is advancing at a pretty rapid rate, and it's going to displace a lot of jobs. You mentioned the Bank of England report. McKinsey did a study that found that proven technology today could lead to 45% of current jobs disappearing over the next several years.
Yeah. Which I think is different than many others, which is that AI is not going to take blue-collar jobs so quickly, but is actually going to take white-collar jobs.
But both will happen. AI will be, at the same time, a replacement for blue-collar, white-collar jobs, and be a great symbiotic tool for doctors, lawyers, and you, for example. But the white-collar jobs are easier to take because they're a pure quantitative analytical process. Let's say reporters, traders, telemarketing, telesales, customer service.
Analysts?
Analysts, yes. These can all be replaced just by a software. To do blue collar, some of the work requires, hand-eye coordination, things that machines are not yet good enough to do.
Robot, recently unveiled by Amazon. It is a robot capable of handling individual items. It is apparently the first robot Amazon has had that can do that, that can potentially replace what is the work done by regular humans to be able to identify individual items based on things like the shape, the size, and the texture, and then use its integrated suction cups to pick them up, sort them, and move them. It's obviously just been rolled out, but they say that it can already identify 65% of Amazon's inventory.
Meet Ella, Singapore's first fully autonomous robot barista.
You're on the way to work and you want a coffee. Get onto our app, order, customize, pay, and Ella will produce.
All right, let's take a look. Ella can whip up a fresh cup of joe at 4 times the rate of her human counterparts.
Brian, we're nearing a day when a robot is going to do more and more of that portion of making a burrito.
Yo, I'm in Phoenix. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I called an Uber, but there's no, it's not an Uber, I guess. It's whatever the car service. I don't know the best way to describe this. I guess the future is upon us today because this one does not have a driver.
Good morning, John. Trader Joe's start ride. Oh my, dude. I'm just gonna. All right, start ride. Nah, dog.
We think that automated technology is one of the ways we can solve this problem by making the trucking industry a lot more efficient.
Right now, drivers have breaks. They need to eat, they need to go to the bathroom, they need to sleep. An autonomous system will be able to keep going indefinitely.
What can mount a curb, has 6 wheels, and is bringing a fresh burrito to your door? A food delivery robot, of course.
In a June survey by job search site Monster.com, 95% of workers considered changing jobs. The most common factor, burnout, followed by a lack of job growth.
Tonight, skyrocketing rents forcing a growing number of Americans to think twice about where home is.
U.S. Census estimates show that during the pandemic, Americans moved out of more populous areas like New York, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C., and moved into smaller cities. In fact, according to the census, between the spring of 2020 and summer of 2021,
that means you wouldn't be able to get through security at the airport. Federal authorities were going to start enforcing the new standards on May 3rd of next year. Pushing the deadline back 2 years gives states more time to ensure that driver's licenses meet all requirements.
The Department of Homeland Security announced its Real ID program for air travelers will begin in May of 2025. The new mandate will require any flyer over 18 to provide a real ID in order to travel domestically.
Your papers, please.
Your documents, sir. But can we all agree that there's nothing more Nazi than saying, "Show me your papers"? There's never been a World War II movie that didn't include the line, "Show me your papers." It's their catchphrase.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker.